Hello and welcome back to Fibro Friday. We are in my kitchen. Yeah, I know it's been pretty casual so far and you've only kind of seen me and whatnot, but today I really want to cover something that several people have asked me about and that I know is really important for people with fibromyalgia and perhaps not very well known about. And it kind of covers two things that are really important for us, which is how can you help someone with fibromyalgia, and also how does food affect someone with fibromyalgia. I may not have time for everything in one take, so these may be two videos, but anyway, just cope with me, okay? So first of all, I really want to talk to you guys about what you can do to help us with fibromyalgia and even with some other chronic illnesses, because I appreciate sometimes it can be a struggle seeing us in pain, seeing us tired, and there is stuff that you can do to help, loads of them. And in fact, the kitchen, I would say, is perhaps the aspect of the house or the area of the house in which you can help most, because there are loads of things that are really difficult for someone with fibromyalgia to do when we are not well, and even when we are well, simply because of, well, there's many things. There are things that can cause us damage, like, oven rings, fire, gas, things like that. We may not be able, cognitively speaking, to actually cope with cooking very well, or notice the smells. Smells can trigger us as well. It can be hard. Doing the dishes can be one of the hardest things to do, just because you have to stand. Sometimes you have to bend, depending on how your sink is situated. It can be actually really struggle, something that you struggle with. So it's not particularly easy. Washing machines tend to be in kitchens, sometimes in bathrooms. We will talk about the bathroom at some other point, but again, bending, picking, that type of repetitive movement, not easy. Loud noises, washing machines often come together, not necessarily something that goes well with someone with fibromyalgia when they're not having a good day. So here is a place where you can actually make a really positive impact. And it's also a place that I think we tend to sort of overlook, because you go to the kitchen every day for whatever purpose, and even if it's just to make a cup of tea, I hope that you go to the kitchen every day. I don't know, I'll be concerned otherwise. And there are many things that actually affect us. We don't notice how they affect us and can have a really severe impact in the way we interact with the kitchen. Like, one of the things for me that is really hard is I love cooking a lot, but cooking sometimes can be really tiring. I mean, I'm tiny anyway, and I don't have the biggest arms, but stirring, doing repetitive movements, it can take a lot of strain in the elbows and the wrists. But not just that, just standing up. Like, I know it sounds crazy, but some days you just can't. And you can't really cook sitting down. It can be really hard. So, cooking can be actually really difficult. You have to keep in mind that although it seems like a menial task and something we do every day, if you're cooking a special meal and you're just not throwing things around and whatever, it takes memory to know when things go. It's still a mechanical aspect and something that the brain has to process, and it takes a lot. And for those of us who like to cook and we like to make really delicious things, it can be quite frustrating because you may simply not be able to even follow up a recipe or just get all of the ingredients sorted. It can be a lot to manage. So if you know someone with fibromyalgia and you like cooking, or you are not shy from the kitchen, just join in the fun, because it's fun, but it also genuinely helps. And there's lots of things that go in the cooking process and in the eating process that you can help with, and it will make things very much better for the other person. And I'll start with a few of them. I'm sure you all know what this is. It's a can opener. I hate them. They are evil, and they should be banned from the face of this earth, because it's so hard to open a can. Like, at best of times, this is one of those mechanical ones, and it has the spinny thing and all of that. At best of times, it's difficult enough to open this if you're a normal person without a chronic illness. It just doesn't go well, holding the can, spinning it around. It can take a lot of pressure in our joints, and just the sheer frustration. I know it may sound silly to you, but the sheer frustration of not being able to get the can open on the first go when you're having a bad day or when you're in pain, it can genuinely set you off, and that can set everything up for disaster. So you can open a can, then you can do something good for someone else. And it's the same with bottles, opening bottles. Like this one, for example, is pretty tight. I struggle a lot opening tight bottles, because again, the grip and the amount of pressure you need to put into a simple bottle just to open it can be a lot. And usually we tend to do things in a movement that is not very comfortable for us. Like, look at me, I'm bringing my arm all the way up here to just open a bottle when I could just do this. But again, it's just a tight grip and it's hard for me. So cans, bottles, great. Jars can be useful as well. It depends, you know, sometimes it's just easier to pop them, sometimes it's not. But it's just something to consider. Something that I found that really helps me a lot is having things with thick handles, because again, if I have that extra security, I can grab them not just with one hand, but with two hands. We just need to accept that sometimes one arm is not strong enough, or we simply don't have the capability to do that. But if you have thick, strong handles, it just really helps. And I'll give you a couple of examples in a moment. And then another thing, and I know this may sound silly again, but I recently acquired one of these, which is just this super hardcore blender that has like 20 settings, does everything for you. And it's also a food processor. Chopping finely things is a sincere struggle for people with fibromyalgia and with other chronic illness. Like if you have arthritis, it's really hard as well, because you need to keep the piece, you know, steady, and then the repetitive movement from the knife. And of course, we know that knives are dangerous on their own. You can cut yourself, you can have other problems. So again, chopping, peeling, opening jars, cans for sure, and bottles can be really helpful. And you generally will think that they seem like small things, but there are small things that really help. So just keep that in mind. And it's not just when you're cooking, it's also when you're eating, even just making a cup of tea. Like, I know you may not think about your mug when you pick it up. You may just think, oh, it's pretty awesome. I think about my mug when I pick it up and see, can I actually hold that? Because sometimes I can't. What do you mean? Well, you know, handles can be really tricky for me. This is not a user-friendly handle for someone who has fibromyalgia, chronic pain, or problems with their joints. Look how small the grip is, and I have small hands. If you have bigger hands than mine, it's probably not gonna be easy, and you'll think, well, you can grab it like that, sure, but this is a big bowl, you know, right now it's empty and it doesn't weigh anything, or not much, but it's so easy to tilt. I literally splash hot drinks and hot liquids on me all the time when I use this, because doing this when it's hot, again, is not easy. And remember, my neuronal perceptors sometimes don't realize how hot something is. So I may do this, I may not notice it's boiling, and 2 minutes later, it smashes on the ground, and there we go. So I prefer handles like this, big, sturdy handles. Not just on glasses or mugs in general, because if you cannot hold it like that, you can always wrap your hand around it, and that just will ensure that, okay, the liquid may spill, but the glass isn't going anywhere, and it just gives you that extra, you know, support for the hand, which is really useful. Now, it's the same with glasses. I prefer glasses that I can hold with both hands, or that are small enough and comfortable enough in one hand that I can hold them just like that. But I also prefer glasses that have these ridges. They're fairly ordinary, I mean, they're nothing special, but again, because they have the ridges, it just gives you that extra grip, you know, you can hold it a bit easier. And something like this, which has more of a sort of plain surface, may be a bit more slippery. And again, problems with grip, putting tension on your wrists and arms just to hold things up can be hard. So just, you know, think about that. And it's the same with utensils. Like, most people think I may be childish because I have these utensils that have plastic handles. It's not. It's purely for comfort. You know, the thin metallic utensils that we have in most houses are very hard for me to hold. And again, because they don't always have that sense of weight and balance. When you have an off day and your perception is off, it's just very easy to smudge food all over you. So these are just easier for me to hold. You know, they're big, they're strong. I can just get about. For knives, please make sure that your knives are sharp. I know we are all concerned about getting cut, but the sharper the knife, the less effort that you have to do when you're cooking, when you're eating, and of course, less pressure that you have in your hands. So just keep that in mind when you are cooking in the kitchen or just doing whatever, because even when you're washing this, it's easier because you can use it like that, and then you just scrub rather than have to fiddle around with something that is thin or small. Again, these are just things that work for me, but there may be other things that you struggle with. And, just take a moment to actually assess them and figure out how they actually affect you, because they can have a really big impact in the way you cook. And they may be putting you off from cooking, but just as a general sort of rule of thumb, in the kitchen, if I can avoid standing up to cook anything for longer than half an hour, I will. I do actually have a couple of chairs here just in case I need to take a break. But for that reason, I prefer to do recipes that just don't take a long time, things that you can leave cooking maybe like in a slow cooker or in the oven. Things that also, if something goes wrong, you have some form of alarm that will tell you something is wrong. Not just the fire alarm, but if something burns, you can smell it. If something is not quite working out, you will have something that will remind you, oh my God, please get help. So, just keep that in mind. And again, I cannot emphasize how much just doing housework can take it out of people. Use whatever you can to make your life easier, to clean. Whatever types of scrubs make your life easier, whatever type of Dettol or, not bleach. I hope you don't clean the kitchen with bleach, but anyway, whatever. Anything that you're using, just make sure it suits you. Get scrubs that are easy to hold. Again, if possible, just try to clean with something that will not make you put so much, elbow grease into it. And again, if you are someone and you want to help, that's one of the easiest ways you can help. Cleaning stuff takes a lot of energy. It can be useful sometimes to get our brain going, doing a little bit of washing up, doing a little bit of cleaning, tidying. Just remember to pace yourself and don't overdo it, because it's so easy to spend hours in the kitchen, cooking, cleaning, tidying, whatever, and then the day will go by, you won't notice, and you'll be knackered. And that's not good. You would be setting yourself up to fail, and that's unfair on you. And I also have here my Hoover, which is, again, it's probably not something that you think on, but hoovering takes a lot of effort, particularly if you're a small person like me, and particularly if you live in the UK, where everything has some form of carpet. Why everything has a carpet? I don't know, but everything sticks to it. It's so hard. You need the right power in the Hoover to get things out of it. I used to have just a whatever trashy Hoover from Argos or something like that, and my back would always hurt because I would have to bend. Again, not very good if you have spasms, any type of chronic illness that stops you from moving around, arthritis. It's hard. And when you're tired, again, it's a proper workout. So if you can help and take that away from someone with these issues, you're doing a great job. But if not, maybe you can help them by buying them something like this. It's a standing Hoover. I mean, this one is pretty good. It's from Bosch, which is always helpful, but it has 3 settings. I don't have to bend to move this thing around. It just goes. And because it is so powerful, it makes it not just easier to clean any surface, but I don't have to bend. I don't even have to put any type of effort in my hands. Maybe sometimes if something gets really stuck. But thing is, like with the blender, in the same case than with the Hoover, I appreciate these things, cost money and they can be pricey. But again, think that it's an investment. You're not going to have to replace your Hoover every month, probably not even every year. I mean, I hope. Otherwise, I'll be concerned as to, what's going on. And it's the same with a blender. Previously, I just had one of those 5-pound ones from Asda, and it's done me up until now, since 2017, which is not bad going. But the thing just didn't have enough power, and I ended up having to, work with it to be able to blend things. So just think about that. £30 may sound like a lot of money, 50, even £100 for a good Hoover. But the impact that can have in your life to make things easier, the durability of it, these things tend to last a while. Just find a way of making it work for you if you can. Really think about the items in your kitchen and how they can make things better for you. And, remember, there's always birthdays, Christmas, things like that. That's another way you can help people with fibromyalgia. If they want or they need something that is really expensive, maybe you can find a way of helping them financially with that sort of stuff to just be able to have that extra push. So I was just talking about things that happen in the kitchen that can be really stressful or hard for us when we have fibromyalgia. But again, one of the main things that we do here is cooking, and cooking and food are so incredibly important for most chronic illnesses. For most people in general, I mean, I'm not going to tell you your diet is probably not suitable for you because I don't know you. But in a lot of cases, we eat and consume things without thinking because it's easy or we just don't care and we don't know the damage that we're actually doing to ourselves. Someone with any type of illness has to think about this, and someone with chronic illness, and particularly fibromyalgia, definitely has to be on top of their game. So the first advice that I have for any of you listening out there, chronic illness or not, is keep a food diary. It's a very tedious thing to do. I did it for 2 years, I know. It's awful, but just keep it because it helps you identify patterns of things that really don't work for you and things that actually really help you out. So the way I did mine, like, you don't need anything special, just a notebook or just scrap paper, I don't care. But I would write the time at which I ate, what I had for breakfast, lunch, dinner, however many hours I ate, and then just kept a general record. Doesn't need to be very detailed. Obviously, it depends how seriously you take this, but it doesn't need to be very detailed. And as time goes on, you will be able to identify, every time I've eaten whatever for the last 6 months, the following day I felt absolutely awful. Maybe there is a pattern here. Maybe that thing is not for me. And it will genuinely help you understand and get a control over something that seems so, I guess, not foreign, but something that just seems so oblivious to us and something that just seems difficult to avoid, and I don't care whether you're medicated or not. It doesn't really matter if you take your pills and they make you better and you keep on eating trash and eating things that are bad for you. You're kind of not helping yourself, and if you can't help yourself at that basic level, doesn't matter how many meds you take, in the long term, this is not going to be sustainable. So you need to think about that. And a food diary seriously helped me out, and it helps so many people just figure out how your body processes things and what works for you, particularly if you're one of those people that on top of fibromyalgia also has IBS, because some things that are good for IBS are not good for fibromyalgia, and so on and so forth. People with mental health issues, you may not know this, but our biggest deposit of serotonin in the body is in the gut. So what you eat has an impact in your mental health. I know, crazy. That's the reason why comfort food is so good, because it releases those chemicals. That's why literally some foods that we consume have a bigger chemical release of pleasure and happiness than things like sex or other stuff like that we immediately associate with pleasure. It's not magic, it's science. It's pure biological reactions and chemistry. So think about it. It generally will help you out, and I think it will really, really make things easier for you. But as we are at it, and I've done this for a really long time, I'll give you some advice that works for me. And then, you can apply it whichever way works for you, because, all of us are different. Our systems don't work the same. But for me, I had already stomachal problems before I started having issues with fibromyalgia. I've always my guts have always been overreactive, and it's just one of those things. You just need to be careful. IBS runs in the family. I've not been diagnosed with IBS myself, but obviously it affects me in some ways. Stomach acid, just gut movement, things like that, they can be hard. And like I said, things that we eat just make them worse, but some things also make them better. So I'll give you, like I said, just a few pointers about what we may eat that makes things worse. I mean, if you have fibromyalgia and you're still eating fast food, stop. Just simply stop. I don't care if it's McDonald's, Burger King, Subway, Domino's, it doesn't matter. It's bad for you, because it's not just what we eat, it's how it's cooked. And we have some control over the things that we eat because we know what they are, at least to a certain degree. But sometimes, particularly when we're having things like that, we don't have control over how they've been cooked. A lot of these things are processed so quickly. They have things that just make them work faster, like the yeast that is used in Domino's and in Subway, for example, just makes the bread span faster than it would. And that's also the reason why you probably feel bloated or simply horrible after you have it later, if you have anything like what I experienced. And in general, they tend to be greasy. It's called fast food for a reason. It doesn't necessarily have to have the same health standards that we can have in our own kitchen. Even a salad, I know. Just keep that in mind. It's the same with other types of processed foods, a lot of like pre-cooked meals, things like that. I know they can make life really easy. Just when you're knackered, throw it in the oven, forget about it, or in the microwave, boom, done. But again, the fact that they've already been pre-cooked, things like that, they can have problems. I'm not saying never do it. I'm just saying don't make it a habit. Don't make it something that goes into your bloodstream every single day or even every single week, because all of those things end up amounting and then they cause problems. So now that I've told you that, and it's at your peril and at your risk, another big no-no when you have fibromyalgia and any type of chronic illness, alcohol. I mean, not just whiskey, any type of alcohol. And again, I'm not saying never, ever, ever have a pint or a glass of wine or scotch or anything that you like, but accept that if you are medicated, even if you are just on painkillers, alcohol has a really bad reaction to the vast majority of drugs out there. It's just a no-brainer. You shouldn't do it because it's going to have a bad reaction. But on top of that, the sediments and the residues that alcohol leaves in our body give a lot of strain to things like the liver and the kidneys to get rid of it. And depending on other things, it can be also the stomach. The harder those two things work, in your case, because you have a chronic illness, the worse, because that's going to put more pressure on your stomach and on your guts to get rid of it. And eventually, again, remember, they affect your neurological processing. Anything that interferes with this is going to cause problems when you have fibromyalgia. So I'm not saying never ever, just moderation and, be aware of it. Right. Other things that you should probably stay aware from. Cauliflower. Not many people know this. And in the UK, we eat a lot of cauliflower. Everyone loves a good cauliflower cheese. And I mean, if you don't, then you're doing it wrong. But I like cauliflower cheese. And I really like cauliflower. We eat a lot of cauliflower in Spain as well. But cauliflower actually, I mean, you may have noticed sometimes when you have this nice roast dinner, you have cauliflower, broccoli. They're really good for you in some ways. Broccoli specifically, cauliflower not so much. But they cause a lot of gas and things like that. And again, that's bad for your for the fibromyalgia, and if you have IBS and other related issues, obviously it's causing you an issue. The problem as well is that cauliflower doesn't have as many vitamins as some other things that can make us feel a bit off, like broccoli, and therefore you're kind of just screwing you over for not very good reason. So try to stay away from cauliflower as much as you can and things like that. And it's the same with apples. I know, but apples are actually really difficult for the stomach and for the intestine to break. And as much as they're a really good source of fiber and they're great for our teeth, they cause all that overwork that we need to avoid. So again, I'm not saying never eat apples. I mean, if you don't like them or if you don't care about them, sure, there are lots of other things out there, but just cut them down and be careful, because too many apples will just make you feel bad, really bad. In general, when it comes to talk about food with fibromyalgia, you need to eat the rainbow. I mean, every single color of it. I'm sorry if you're a fussy eater, but you're just going to have to get over it, because you're not going to be able to get out of the nutrients that you need to process things and to help your brain rebalance itself. Fruits, veg, awesome. Smoothies, if you've been following me for a while, I do lots of smoothies. If you don't like eating fruit, it's a good way of just getting it out of the way. Just blend it, done. Great, fantastic. And, stay hydrated, obviously. I'm really bad at keeping track of my water. I've always been. My mom used to say I'm like a camel. Anyway, try to drink as much as possible. But interestingly, and again, this is probably going to be really bad news for some of you, you may have to cut down on your tea and your coffee. I know it sucks. But tea makes your kidneys work faster. Again, that can cause problems with the rest of your body. And coffee, just caffeine, once again, it can be really hard. So if you are one of those people that has the habit of waking up in the morning, putting the kettle on and making one of those drinks, just think twice. Find ways of controlling that habit, because it will come and bite you. And I know it's very easy when you're tired to make a cup of coffee and think that you're energized, but that's not the solution. The solution is probably something that you thought you had to get rid of, which is carbohydrates. Now, let me tell you, carbohydrates will make you fat. The excess of carbohydrates make you fat. The excess of anything would make you fat, and it will make you unhealthy. Sure, some carbohydrates are very difficult for our metabolism to break down, particularly if you're gluten intolerant, and if you have IBS, it can be hard. But actually, it's those carbohydrates and some fats that allow us to have that energy so that we can overcome our fatigue. So if you've been following any of these diets that are on the internet, or something that someone recommended you for whatever other reason, I'm sorry to tell you, a lot of the time these diets don't actually work. Or they may for a while, but then your body starts losing out on something else. I don't cut anything unless I know it's always repeatedly causing me problems. And a lot of the time, don't even cut them out completely. You need a balanced diet. And the only way you're going to find that is if you eat a bit of everything. It's the same with fish, meat, things like that. Eat fish as much as you want. And the same with seafood. If you have fibromyalgia and most chronic illness, they have a lot of good things like fatty acids, nutrients that you wouldn't get otherwise, minerals, very important. Again, if you're fussy, you're just going to have to try and get over it. And with meats, I really have to tell you, you have to cut down on pork as much as you can, because pork has so much fat, and it's usually not the good fat. But also the type of meat that it is again, very troublesome for our stomach and our digestive system to break down. You're a lot better with things like chicken or turkey, which are leaner, and you can process easier and actually have some more components that are good for you, mostly minerals. But also red meat. I know there's big controversies with red meat and all of that. I don't care. You need them. Iron is so important. And sure, you can get iron from other sources like beans, chickpeas, lentils. If you don't have them in your diet, do. Careful with the amount, because again, they can cause some gas and overreaction of the digestive tract, but they're so good for you. They have so much stuff in there that is so good for your brain and good for your gut. Just be careful. And the same with red meat. I don't have red meat once a week. Maybe I have red meat once a month or twice a month. It depends. Just find your balance. And you will notice that it also helps your pocket, which is useful. Right, other things that are important when cooking: season things properly. Salt is important for you. Pepper is important for you. And things like basil help you digest. And, sometimes we tend to forget about these things, but they can make not just your digestion process easier, but they can bring some joy into cooking when, sometimes you need to cut off certain things. You cannot have certain flavors. Just, rethink about your spice rack, and a lot of these things can actually help you feel better. So just, think about that. Do you snack? Do you like snacking? Who doesn't? I do. Stay away from sweets. Not just because of your teeth, just because the vast majority of the chemical components that go into making them tend to trigger the fibromyalgia as well. Try nuts. Almonds are really good. And in fact, most nuts are great for you. Even if they are roasted or salted, things like that make them taste perhaps a bit nicer. They're not as good as just raw, but they're still good. Just stay away from peanuts and peanut butter as well, which is a big problem for me because I love it. But as much as they have so much protein, the amount of palm oil that is in there is so bad for the fibromyalgia. It will make you feel incredibly unwell. And of course, if you have other issues like IBS and things like that, it will make things harder for you. So just keep that in mind. Just everything in moderation. I genuinely mean it. And just rethink when you go to the supermarket and you try to remember, the shopping list and the things that you may have forgotten or not. Just have a thought about, think about it and see what you come up with. But just keep track of it, and it will help you feel better. And I think that's all I have time for today. But thank you so much, and I'll catch you on next week. Bye.